Good Saturday morning, ladies and gentlemen. Weather Center Nazario back for a crucial update as we get ready for today and tomorrow's main event, with this system pushing in off of the Gulf of Mexico, headed straight towards the Tampa-St. Petersburg area. If you are watching this video upon release, I am actually no longer in the Weather Center, and I will have departed by now to go begin our storm chasing coverage down in South and Western Florida. However, I wanted to come in and to make a video for you guys in case you missed any of the live coverage we will be populating on my social media platforms, TikTok, Instagram, and as well as my live coverage here provided on my YouTube channel. This way you have something hard to reference despite my absence from being able to make video content throughout the day today and likely tomorrow, since we will be on the road. So please, if you wouldn't mind, like and share this information, like and share this video, as well as subscribe to the channel if you're brand spanking new so you don't miss a future update upon the events that are going to be unfolding over the next 24, 36 hours, as well as what is likely to take place as this system, starting in the Gulf of Mexico, continues to transition up the eastern seaboard, posing more severe threats, which we will cover in this video segment for the mid-Atlantic region and the northeast United States. Right out of the gate, we're using our College of DuPage visual satellite shot, and as that sun comes up, you can see our low-pressure center has formed, and it is completely closed off there in the central and southern portions of the Gulf of Mexico. I've been looking at windy since late yesterday evening and earlier this morning when I first woke up, and we do now have a very pronounced low center of circulation associated with this feature, and it is expected to continue to slowly transition off to the east-northeast towards its fateful impact somewhere in this general quadrant of western Florida, between Tampa, St. Petersburg, up towards the Clearwater area, possibly a little bit further to the north than that. Our HRRR and our NAM models, the 3-kilometer NAM for that matter, the high-resolution aspect of it, is anticipating we could see landfall maybe just to the north of Tampa Bay, which is not good in terms of what kind of impacts we could see in that general area. We have some very good thunderstorm activity already firing up. If you look right in through this general quadrant of the storm, this is the south and southeastern quadrant of it, we are right over top where our warmest waters are in the Gulf of Mexico still. If you hearken back to a few videos ago, I'd mentioned that sea surface temps are still between 25 to 28 degrees Charlie in that general area, which equates to approximately 76 to 80 degrees Fahrenheit, which is more than enough to give us a little bit of that subtropical characteristic to the center of this storm that we've discussed over the last several days. We also have this other area of strong precip and rainfall that's affecting the Cayman Islands, parts of Jamaica and Cuba, already bringing some rainfall to our Bahamas Islands as well, that is expected to lift up towards the north and only reinforce the overall precip coverage we see throughout the day today and throughout much of Sunday. Here's our Day 1 4 panel from Storm Prediction Center, and you can see that our threat for severe and tornadic activity has actually been expanded yesterday and throughout much of the day yesterday for that matter. The area we were most likely looking at possibilities for tornadoes, for severe weather with this system, was from the Tampa area through to the Space Coast. It was the southern half of the Florida peninsula. This has since expanded since earlier this morning, now encompassing Daytona Beach and further to the north towards Jacksonville and the Florida-Georgia state line, and it is likely to persist over the next 12 to 18 hours, even into the day tomorrow. As I switch over to Day 2, you can see that now we are looking at the southern half of the state, still under a pronounced threat for some severe activity. We're looking at a level 2 threat, according to Storm Prediction Center. The Weather Channel, I noticed yesterday in the last 24 hours, has highlighted us for a Torcon threat of between 3 to 4 in some localized areas, and our local meteorological networks out in the Tampa Bay area, western Florida, are highlighting that general geographic section of the Florida peninsula for a somewhat enhanced risk for a stray funnel cloud, waterspout, or an inland tornado. It is not pictured here, but Storm Prediction Center has also highlighted the mid-Atlantic region, parts of North Carolina, Virginia, and the most northeastern periphery of South Carolina for the same type of threat for severe weather, non-convective and convective winds in excess of 50 knots, an isolated tornado risk, very widespread rainfall, and flooding likely. We'll get to that towards the back end of this segment. Very briefly, looking at our heavy hitter models, these are going to be both 0 and 060 of the Euro on the left and the GFS on the right-hand side, and both of our models are in very solid agreement for a northern Florida peninsula landfall coming in at about 900 to 993 millibars. Both the Euro and the GFS are literally neck and neck mirroring one another, as you can see with this system on approach, both in terms of projected path and projected intensity, which is very good. We have very great consistency in all of our models at this point, so we know more or less where the worst of our impacts are likely to be, and we can start to nail down what our localized impacts are going to look county by county, quadrant by quadrant of not only the Sunshine State, but further to the northeast for that matter. All right, speaking of localized impacts, we are now looking at our 12 Zulu HRRR. And on the left-hand side, we have our simulated reflectivity. On the right-hand side, we're actually looking at our updraft helicity, how much rotation these thunderstorms embedded within this swath of rainfall around this system could contain as they push not only into the western coastline of Florida, but I'm also noticing some enhancement likely due to our Gulf Stream current on the east coast that could elevate our severe weather and tornado risk for us in southeast Florida near Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Boca Raton, Vero Beach, and further to the north. As we take this through time, you can see the HRRR is expecting widespread isolated thunderstorms within the precip field, as I mentioned previously, with the bulk of the severe weather likely to occur right around sunset. This is 0Z or 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where you can see a large majority of our most updraft helicity already encompassing much of the southern and southeastern Florida peninsula, with some impacts likely for the Bahamas and the Florida Keys, with more of that severe weather action approaching the Tampa Bay area, western Florida. You continue through the loop, and you can see our updraft helicities do not stop there. We're starting to see that coverage span into central Florida, parts of Osceola, Brevard, and Polk County, getting closer to Marion, Seminole County, Orange County, the Orlando metro area. We are going to see this threat continue to expand as the cold sector of this storm begins to wrap around. Notice if you look on the simulated reflectivity, we have this large quadrant of the storm that is almost void of any significant activity. That's because the polar front jet that's coming off of the Gulf coastline as we speak, further enhancing the cyclogenesis with this system, is likely to add some dry air entrainment to the backside of this system, give it a little bit of polar modified air along the backside as well. That's only going to allow a nice frontal appendage to form and squall-like features to roll through South and Central Florida. This threat is likely to persist throughout the day today, and this is already now Sunday morning sunrise. You can see a lot of our updraft helicity is now offshore. You can very visually see where we're likely to have that enhancement brought on by our warm Gulf Stream current. All of the overlays here are definitely getting up into the 40, 50, 60 percentile threshold, which is only going to further enhance how much rotation we see with these storms. And on the left-hand side, that center of circulation as of 12 Zulu on Sunday is likely to be approaching St. Augustine, Jacksonville, and crossing into southeastern Georgia, where their severe threat and the localized flood threat is going to start going up. Now, on the left-hand side, we have our significant tornado parameters. On the right-hand side, we have our HRRR 850 millibar flow. And the reason I want to bring these up side by side is you can see as our SIG-TORN parameters go up for the south and southwestern portions of Florida, as those localized isolated instances of convective activity in our overall rain field around the low pressure center encounter the Gulf Stream waters, we are seeing a little bit of enhancement. So our folks out there in the northern and very westernmost extent of the Bahama Islands could do battle with some severe conditions as well. Water spouts, funnel clouds, tornadoes, rope-like tornadoes for that matter. We're not looking at long duration or very strong tornadoes. We're looking between the intensity levels of F0 to F1, maybe within the span of a few minutes, maybe a few seconds. We never know. They're going to be very pulse-like in their nature, nothing long-lasting, thankfully. On the 850 millibar overlay, you can see our good conveyor belt is established across much of the Florida peninsula, which is why I'm in full agreement with Storm Prediction Center, more or less dragging the coverage of our severe and isolated tornado threat further to the north towards that Florida-Georgia state line, because it goes without saying, with the anticipated track of this system, that warm sector where our most buoyant and unstable air, our CAPE, ML, and surface-based, are going to expand a little bit further if that low tracks just slightly further to the north of Tampa Bay, as opposed to yesterday we were anticipating the southern half of the Florida peninsula was going to be beneath it for the most part. Just to take you briefly through what we're looking at in terms of sustained winds and wind gusts, we have our HRRR on the right and our NOAA NAM model on the left, and we are in very good agreement once more that right about 18 Zulu, we're going to start seeing our wind speeds pick up from the west and all the way down to the southern portion of Florida. The Keys are going to be underneath tropical storm force winds at this point. This is about 2 to 3 p.m. in the afternoon. We're going to start seeing conditions slowly roll downhill. And again, the 0Z time frame is going to be pivotal as we go through the rest of the night tonight. You can see both of our models on both overlays here at 0Z 7 p.m., guys, is when the full extent of our tropical storm sustained winds and tropical storm-like gusts are going to be approaching the Tampa-St. Pete area. This is when our storm surge is likely to start going up. Our wave heights are going to increase. Right now, most of our models are predicting anywhere between 10 to 15, maybe even 20-foot isolated swells as the system rolls in. So despite it not being a named storm. I haven't heard this mentioned too much on the YouTube weather sphere, but despite this being a baroclinic cold core, maybe subtropical-like system, a hybrid if you will, it does not take a named storm to bring some pretty incredible impacts to your local neighborhood as we continue to see landfall and this transition across the Florida peninsula, moving in a northeastward fashion, probably somewhere to the north of Tampa Bay, and then exiting the state, if not rolling into Georgia, right around Jacksonville and Clearwater, as we mentioned on the panel previously. So take this serious. It is not a highlighted feature. It is not tagged by any official source. We have our Storm Prediction Center overlays, but that's about it. And I want to echo those sentiments one more time, guys, that even though we are out of hurricane season per the calendar, it does not take a named storm to bring us these kind of impacts and this kind of phenomena. This is El Nino firing on all 10 cylinders. Last but not least, before we close out the video, we're looking at the eastern half of the United States. We're looking at our 850 millibar temperature advection because I want to show you exactly why we are likely to see a severe threat expand into the rest of the southeast quadrant and the mid-Atlantic region, particularly North Carolina, the eastern tip of South Carolina, and into Virginia, and maybe a little further up the northeastern seaboard. As we take this through time, you can see this is about the time frame we're expecting landfall. This is 0 to 06 Zulu down in the southeast. You can see our good warm conveyor belt. All the red shading is indicative of our warm air advection, or the movement of warm air to the north. And then on the left-hand side, or the westward side of this storm, you can see that cold air working its way in on the backside, which is why on our simulated reflectivity, you notice that the radar kind of just dissipated. There was a pocket of almost no returns in that quadrant of the storm because we have that cold, modified polar air working its way in on the backside. I'll quickly take this through time, and as you can see, that warm conveyor belt is likely to encompass much of Virginia, North Carolina, and South Carolina as it continues its way up the eastern seaboard of the United States. That warm conveyor belt is showing very good signs of strong winds associated with it. I can see wind barbs between 70 and 80 knots, approaching 85 knots in some localized areas. So we are definitely likely to see the same type of severe weather coverage we're seeing here in the peninsula expand further to the north into some of our mid-Atlantic states. So be on the lookout, guys. You have maybe about 24 hours in advance to prepare for some possible localized severe weather in your area. As this continues on, you can see that warm conveyor belt is likely to affect some of the northeastern United States before we get another punch of cold air out of the Great Lakes, northern plains, and the Midwest to reinforce the baroclinicity, or the temperature discontinuity with this. And for all intents and purposes, without getting tongue-tied, I mentioned this yesterday in my live stream, this system is likely to jump jets. It's going to support itself off the subtropical jet in the Gulf with a little bit of northern periphery influence from the polar front jet, but by the time we see it propagate far enough to the north, we're going to see it leave that subtropical, or that El Nino lower latitude jet, and completely hop aboard the polar front jet and pick up a lot more temperature discontinuity, a lot more cold polar air from the continental U.S. and Canada. Alrighty, folks, we're going to close out the video. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Like I said, if you are watching today at this point when this video releases, I'm already on the road, so please stay tuned for live coverage, live updates throughout the Florida Peninsula. It looks like we're going to be heading down towards the Naples, if not Fort Myers, Punta Gorda area in the southwest initially, and then either transitioning back further inland as our bands of activity roll through the peninsula, or possibly retreat towards the Tampa-St. Pete area to see exactly how strong the winds get, how bad the wave heights and the storm surge could possibly be for parts of Hillsborough County. So we'll see you guys very soon. Please subscribe to the channel, turn those notifications on because you do not want to miss an update. I'm very excited and I'm motivated to bring you guys this live coverage as this situation unfolds. So we'll see you later this afternoon into the early morning hours of tonight, guys. I look forward to meeting with you. Hopefully, if you can join the live streams, be safe out there, prepare, maintain your situational awareness, and we're going to get you through this. This is Weather Center Nazario, signing out.